And last but not least in this little trio, we have James Spellane from the Charterhouse in London. James studied history and has worked with heritage visitors since 2007. Well done. He joined the Charterhouse when it first opened to the public in 2017, and he looks after the public programme, including daily guided tours of the rooms and courtyards, and manages a collection relating to the charity and the historic Clerkenwell site. He's going to talk to us today about inspiring interiors and neighbouring histories, particularly about the creative responses to the Charterhouse. So with that, I will invite you up, James, and you can chat to them.
Afternoon all. I'm acutely aware of being the last one on before lunch, so just hang in there. I've got two projects to talk about. Those are the titles of them, Inspiring Interiors and Neighbouring Histories. And those are part of our community engagement programme, which were coordinated and managed by my colleague Nicola. She's put me up here as the mouthpiece for the organisation, but all credit to her for facilitating these two projects over the last couple of years. My role as visitor engagement manager is looking after all of the members of the public who visit the Charterhouse. I'll talk to you a bit about our historic site, our charity, what we do on a daily basis, what people do when they come and visit us, but I look after them when they're on site. Basically that's a free museum display which explains the history of our site, and then it's also guided tours. We are quite a big site in central London, but we're a bit tucked away. Maybe our public profile isn't as high as it could be, which is something we're working on. And so we open up the place as much as we can to get people around to share our heritage. All of the income that we generate from public engagement goes towards supporting the work of the charity. And I'll give you a bit of context on what that is. So, we're talking about collections as well. I should mention that I do manage with my collections manager hat on, a really small collection, which is very, very tightly focused on our site, its history in all its different incarnations, and it's about 3,000 objects, so it's absolutely minuscule compared to some of your collections. But it is fairly poorly documented. This is something that we've only been doing as an organisation for about 8 years, so there's still lots and lots of work to do to understand what the collection is. We'll get there eventually. So, on to the two projects then. Here we go. So, before I get started on those, let's explain what the Charterhouse is. I don't expect too many of you have visited. If you haven't, please come along and see us. We're open Tuesday to Saturday, and you can just drop in to see our exhibition. But this is what we are. The Charterhouse is an alms house, which is a very particular type of housing charity. You might be familiar with almshouses being little cottages that are provided by, a philanthropist from the 17th century who's left a bit of money to look after older people in the community. The Charterhouse was done on a really grand scale. Our philanthropist was Thomas Sutton, who bought this house in central London in 1611. It was formerly the home of the Duke of Norfolk, so it was a huge gesture of philanthropy. He transformed this palatial mansion into accommodation for older people, and we're still doing that today. We've got a community who live around our site. There are about 35 people resident today. Our residents are single men and women. They're over the age of 60, and most importantly, they have a housing need. The official name of the charity is Sutton's Hospital, and that's in the old sense of hospital. It doesn't provide medical care, but it does provide hospitality. It's a place to live. So, the site itself, we're technically just inside the borough of Islington, adjoining the City of London, so we're extremely central, and the whole site is about 7.5 acres. So it's a big place for that part of the world. Crucially, we've actually got quite a lot of green space as well, and that's really unusual in Islington, which is, in terms of open space, the least green London borough. Those gardens are private for the residents, but like with the buildings, we open them up as much as we can for public engagement. So we have tours with the horticulturalists in the summer and open evenings as well once a month in the summer. Onto the buildings themselves, which is what our projects that I'm talking about today were focusing on. The historic buildings include the main building, which is a Tudor period mansion from the 1540s, but we've also got some amazing remnants of the thing that was there before, which was London's Carthusian monastery, known as the London Charterhouse. So we've got bits of fabric that date back to the 1370s, layers and layers of history in our buildings. And those buildings are the inspiration for everything we do with public engagement. It's all about opening up and sharing that heritage with the public. So, the collections, which are, as I said, pretty small, are all focused on those different bits of our history. So the monastery, the Tudor mansion, and the charity, which has been going since 1611. We've got a small exhibition room where you can go in and see highlights from the collection, but we also have, dotted around the main communal rooms of the house, we've got all sorts of things from the collections, from pictures on the walls to tapestries and the silver collection, all kinds of things that people will see when they're on our guided tours. It's important to remember as well that we have an internal community as well. So we've got a collection which is working for the residents of our charity. These are the two projects. The crucial point to make is that they were intended to be accessible workshops for older people. So it's focusing on the same area, the same mission of the main charity. We're engaging with communities who might not otherwise be visiting us, and creating opportunities for them to spend time on our site. We went for an art angle for these two projects, which meant that we worked with a couple of facilitators to deliver, and importantly, no experience was necessary. We've got some absolutely amazing responses to our buildings and our collections from people with all sorts of different levels of ability. This is the outline of the two projects. First of all, Inspiring Interiors, which started in autumn 2023, and that was for residents of the Charterhouse and for service users at the Stuart Low Trust, which is a charity in Islington, our neighbours. For the second project, Neighbouring Histories, we repeated the same format of art workshops, with a slightly different focus, and that was last year, and we've actually just opened a small exhibition of the work that was produced just last week. And we, in addition to the residents and the Stuart Low Trust, we worked with patients at St Bartholomew's Hospital, which is just down the road. The workshops are facilitated by my colleague Nicola, who was our community engagement manager, but with her freelance facilitator's hat on as Creative Writes, she facilitates creative writing workshops, and with Martine from Pomegranate, who was working on tutoring drawing and photography across the two workshops. The whole idea of these is that people were spending quite a lot of time on site. So we had sessions that went on for at least a couple of months, and they were 3 hours at a time. So it's a really in-depth exploration of the site and its collections. And it meant that the same participants would come back week after week. They'd have a chance to socialise and to talk about what they were doing while they're developing those skills and creating pieces of art. This was supported by Museum Development London, a grant from the Diversity Matters programme. So this is the first series of workshops. This is Inspiring Interiors from 2023 and 4, and some examples of the work that was created. The format of the day was that we'd start with a history talk from me or one of my colleagues, and we would pick a different room around the house each week to focus on. It was then up to the artists in the workshop to choose what they were going to focus on within that room. And so they might find architectural details that they were interested in. They might pick something from the collection that's on display, and then they would sit for an hour or so, start producing their work of art. They'd have a bit of tutorial time with the facilitators, have a break, a cup of tea, and then come back to finish up. And what we've got here are two of the rooms that we chose. In the top left corner is the chapel, And we've got someone there drawing the ends of the pews. If you look on the bottom row there, that's the dog, the head of a greyhound, which sits on the ends of all the pews. That's part of the coat of arms of the charity's founder, and there are hundreds of them all over the site, and they're actually quite difficult to draw. It is a greyhound. I think it looks a bit like a duck with ears, but they really captured the attention, and the idea of drawing things like that is actually learning drawing techniques, shape, texture, shading. You can see a quote from Martine here where she talks about light and form, picking out architectural details, translating dynamic perspectives onto paper, the subtleties of light transitions with the simplicity and endless potential of mark-making with pencils, which I think is a really poetic way of putting it. And these were really, really fun workshops. The other one in the other corner is the Great Chamber, which was one of our big projects in recent years. We refurbished this room, which hadn't been touched since the 1950s. So it's got this really wonderful green silk on the walls. It's a permanent home for our collection of 17th and 18th century portraits. And that's one of our participants having a staring contest with the Earl of Shaftesbury. And another real favourite of mine, right at the bottom, is the corner of a tapestry, which is, I don't know if you can just about make out, blown up nice and big, the real detail of the texture that's been picked out with the pencil. And that took absolutely hours, just staring at the corner of a tapestry. But we absolutely love the results. So, the next project, which I said we've just wrapped up, we've just opened an exhibition in one of our public areas, so people can drop in and see what we've been up to. This one is Neighbouring Histories, which followed the same basic format as the first project, but with different media. So this time we were looking at creative writing and photography. We'd have a creative writing prompt at the start of each session, and then the participants would go off and be inspired. And throughout the course of the session, they'd have a one-to-one session with a photographer to compose an image that had something to do with their creative writing piece. And so I've paired up some of the words and images here so you get an idea of what the outputs were. The creative writing prompt here is from one of the weeks where we talked about isolation. This got us thinking right back to the beginning of the Charterhouse story, when it was a medieval monastery, when it was a place for people not to visit. It was a place for 25 monks to live locked behind thick stone walls in isolation from the city outside. What were their experiences like in solitary confinement? What were these bustling public spaces like when they were empty and silence was enforced? The Carthusians were a silent order, and it's really inspiring to be in those spaces. You see the shadowy corridor there is the Norfolk cloister, which later became a feature of the Tudor house, which replaced the monastery after it was closed down by Henry VIII. But it's a hugely atmospheric space, and you can really touch the stone walls from 1371 and imagine what it would be like to live inside one of those monastic cells. The outputs from this project were absolutely fantastic. We've got lots of evocative images in the exhibition that's been put together, but I really like the words as well. I think my favourite one is at the bottom with this inscription on a pew in the chapel, with the name Fields, who we believe was a schoolboy. The chapel it's an amazing historic space, and it's absolutely full of memorials to people who've been there over the centuries. And this was Deborah, who's one of our residents, and she really honed in not on these marble monuments to the great and the good, but actually to Fields, who was present at one of these interminable chapel services and had left his name on the pew, bored rigid and full of mischief, she said. Leaving a mark with a penknife rather than in great lumps of marble. And it's a great image. The picture of the monk is a really good one as well. This is an example of some of the collection which is out on display in the house. The Charterhouses, the medieval monasteries, were all closed down on the orders of Henry VIII in the 1530s. There is one in this country which is still going. It's post-Reformation. It was founded in the 19th century, and we wrote them a cheeky letter. After a couple of visits, we were donated one of those. That's a habit worn by a Carthusian monk. It was probably made in the 1960s. They lived the same lifestyle as those medieval monks had done all those centuries ago. And I hadn't really intended the display to actually capture that really dramatic light in the cloister. It's a really cool photo of like buildings and collections coming together. So that's Neighbouring Histories. This is what it's really all about. This is the social side of our projects. It's about sharing our facilities with our neighbouring communities. So we've got a mix here of our residents and some people from the Stuart Low Trust in Islington and Bart's Hospital. They're not actually doing any work at the moment. They're just having a cup of tea, which is actually the point of the whole thing. It's just a chance for communities to come together and spend some time in these places. These are some of our participants having a tour with me. I've got a couple of testimonials that I'll read out very, very quickly. Along the way, I've made friends, I've laughed, learned, and been inspired. How about this one? The project was inspiring, it was challenging, it was highly enjoyable, and confidence building, which is a really nice output from this kind of thing. It was learning skills as well as having a good time in a really interesting place. One last picture I'll leave you with works on so many levels. It's a really nicely composed photograph from our workshop. This is one of our residents, and if you know what she's looking at, it has an extra layer of meaning. She's in the middle of the Tudor Great Chamber, which is a function room for the Duke of Norfolk, and there's a bust on the window at the far end, which is a bust of the founder of the charity, Thomas Sutton. So she is a beneficiary of his charity, founded more than 400 years ago, and she's having this kind of face-off with him. And I do wonder what they'd talk about if they met. So that's me done. Any questions?